Okay, I just wanted to talk to you briefly about ordering wedding flowers. It might sound like quite a dull thing to talk about, but actually it's something that I've learnt many lessons through. So when you first start as a florist, you get your first booking for a wedding, and you think, crikey, I've got to order my flowers, make sure I get everything exactly right, make sure the wholesaler knows exactly what I want it all to come in on a certain day, and then I can process it and get it going and, you know, create all that kind of jazz. But the bride will have her style, have her colour scheme, have all that she wants, and you know that because you've quoted for it and you've talked it through with her, and you know the look she's going for, all that kind of stuff. And you will talk specific flowers. It might be that she absolutely adores peonies, but you've talked to her about peonies because they come in end of April, as we well know, and they finish anything between end of June to end of July. And it's a balancing act, I think, with ordering flowers, because believe me, I've been a florist for 16 years. I've seen most things happen. You know, a phone call from my wholesaler, I've ordered flowers 2 weeks ahead of schedule. A phone call on the Wednesday from my wholesaler saying, terribly sorry, those peonies you ordered for tomorrow have not come in. And you're like, oh, Mum, and you start swearing blue murder. So that's probably my first tip, is if you are going for slightly more exotic, quote unquote, flowers, is to put your order in ahead of time. So worst case scenario, I used to be really disorganised, and I would put my order in the Tuesday before the Saturday, which was the wedding. That's just plain stupid, because if I'm ordering David Austin roses, you've got to be kidding. The order goes to Holland and then obviously goes to South America, and they get picked. I mean, things ship out quickly, we know that. We live in the 21st century, it's fine. But I would always say try and put your order in sort of at least a week and a half, so that they can't phone up and go, well, you only ordered it 2 days ago, so, you know, how do you expect us to do that? So first tip of the day, order ahead of schedule, get yourself organised. It doesn't always happen for me, still doesn't always happen for me, and I've been in this industry for too long. But definitely worth remembering. The next thing is the colour. It's really interesting. So a bride will meet a year ahead of her wedding, super excited. You know, she's got her Pinterest boards, she's got you know, all her photos of what she wants, she knows exactly what she wants, and you've quoted for it, you've sent her pictures, you know, brilliant, lovely. As time goes on, she'll see various bits and bobs, she'll see other ideas on Pinterest, she'll see ideas on Instagram, and things change. You know, the quote sort of, it ebbs and flows. I always call it, in my first meetings with couples, I call it, the flowers are a series of conversations that you're going to have, and those conversations will shift and change to a certain extent. But the colour element is really interesting. So they'll have picked their bridesmaids' dresses. The suits will probably be last on the list, they normally are. But their colour scheme, they're fairly sure on, and it probably won't change unless, you know, the worst was to happen. But again, that's happened for me. And one of my biggest issues when I first started was worrying about whether the colours were right. So she wants white roses. The roses come in and they're cream. And believe me, I've had sleepless nights about those cream bloody roses. She has pale peach bridesmaids dresses, and she wants lilac roses. They come in and they're pink. Or, you know, they come in and they've got a greenish tinge to them. It happens. I think I've learnt in those initial meetings to talk about the fact that flowers are from nature, you know, they're part of nature. So there will be an element that I can't always control the colour. There will be an element of you know, they might come in a shade darker or a shade lighter, or, you know, that kind of thing. So it's talking about that in the first meetings that you have with the couple. But as time goes on and you get closer and closer to the wedding, I've had episodes where the wholesalers phoned up and said, we can't get this rose, but we can get you this one. And my wholesaler is brilliant. You know, I give them credit. I've been with them for, I don't know, 12, 15 years. So they know me, I know them. I have a good working relationship with them. So they will give me alternatives. But then as soon as you get the alternative, you look at it and think, dear Lord above, she's going to hate it. And you convince yourself that she's going to hate it. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, she probably won't even notice that it's a shade lighter or it's a shade darker. And I think that's where the balance comes of you as a florist just relaxing a little bit and saying, actually, these are beautiful flowers. She won't go apoplectic at the fact that they're a shade lighter or a shade darker. It's a balance. It's definitely a balance. You don't want to deliver something to the door on the day of the wedding and it looks completely different to what she thinks it's going to be like. But there is always that element of in the excitement of the day, you turn up, I turn up 2 hours before the wedding with a bouquet and the bridesmaids' bouquets. And believe me, I pack myself every time. I'm so nervous because that's the most important thing, that the bride loves the bouquet. I still get nervous after 12 years. But there's an element of if you've done a good job, you've made something beautiful, it's along the lines of what she is expecting, then after that, you need to stop panicking because it's not worth it, I think that's my next tip, is just to be aware that things will change. There will be times where the wholesaler phones up and says, can't get this, but I can get this. Is allow some flexibility. And normally, there's always a solution. There's no point in getting yourself, absolutely het up. That would be my next tip. So to chill out a little bit. Easier said than done, believe me. And I think my next tip, final tip, would just be in ordering those flowers is just to think, and I've talked about it in episodes of some of our tutorials, is, say for instance, anemones. You've got a spring wedding and she wants blue anemones. You've got the blue anemones, wonderful, but you ordered them a week too late. Not that they're a week late after the wedding, but you've ordered them, they arrive on the Tuesday and the wedding is on the Friday. If you're in the middle of winter in the UK, it's normally quite cold, so they're going to struggle to open. I've come across putting them, my tip for myself is I put them in the kitchens here at Hartley Farm Shop because it's warm. So they regularly get roses in jugs in their kitchen because I need them to open, and 99% of the time they do. But it's just to plan ahead, think about when you need stuff opening, when you need stuff to be at its best, because it does need to be at its prime when you deliver it on the day. It can't be, closed, or can't be whatever, it can't be drooping. It needs to look amazing. But I think all of these kind of tips are brilliant for just making your life a little bit easier, and there's stuff that I've learned along the way, and it just helps you relax a little bit. And my final tip, I'm going to keep giving you final tips, is just to write lists on the day of the wedding. Is write yourself a list of where you're going, what you're doing, who you're talking to, what you're dropping off where. And this is not so much about ordering flowers, but just about organisation, I think. It's all of these things that to keep you a little less stressed. So where have I got to go? I've got to go to the venue, I've got to go to the reception, I've got to go to the bride's house, I've got to drop buttonholes with the groom. All of these places you need to be at. Do I need 2 people? Do I need 3 people dropping off? Just to think about it. And just try and help yourself relax a little bit, because it is stressful. You want to do a good job, you want everything to be wonderful, but it's just tips and ways that you can help yourself a bit in the business of running a floristry company. So my tip 1, struggle to remember what I've told you. Tip 1 is ordering ahead of schedule. So give yourself a week and a half, 2 weeks if you can. If you're ordering specific stuff, specific colours, order them ahead of schedule. Tip 2, colours, thinking about those colours, that there might come a time where you get that phone call from the wholesaler saying, not quite the same, I can give you an alternative, is to relax into that. Because I've done it actually, backtracking a bit, I've done it numerous times where I've had alternatives be delivered, and I've had to phone the bride up and go, just to say, those roses that you wanted, they've come in and they're a shade lighter, they're still beautiful, etc, etc. And 99% of the time the bride goes, oh, sounds wonderful, because 2 days before the wedding they've forgotten that specific colour that they wanted, and genuinely, believe me, they have. So just to be aware of that. So that was tip 2, lost track. Just to be aware of that. And then the next thing was writing lists of where you're going to, what you're delivering, where who needs what, and all that kind of stuff. just to keep yourself on track. And it's all these sorts of things that just let you relax a little bit, to know that you're organised, that you've got stuff covered. So hopefully those are some good tips for you just in the running of your floristry business. And if you've enjoyed this video, then click like and subscribe below.